Hello dear students of third prep science for first term and new episode of science, and we have today to study a new lesson as we have lesson 3 in unit 1 scalar and physical quantities. But before we study or we will start this episode, we will take just a little problem about the previous lesson as we talk about the acceleration in the previous episode, and we know what is meant by acceleration and the types of acceleration. So we have here a problem to describe the kind of acceleration according to the value of acceleration at the end of this problem. So let's go to start with this problem, then we will start with a new lesson today as we talk about physical quantities. We have here, as you see dear students, questions زي ما احنا شايفين على المونيتور قدامنا. بيبقى problems زي ما احنا شايفين. Train moves by a speed 20 meter per second زي ما احنا شايفين قدامنا. تمام؟ with uniform deceleration negative 2 meter per second power 2. If the brakes are applied. brakes هنا معناها الفرامل are يعني متاحة are applied. Find the time needed to stop the train. ان انا الوقت اللي انا ممكن استخدمه to stop this train. So here we have two as we studied before, we have V1 V2. So train moves by a speed 20 meter per second V1 with uniform deceleration as negative 2 meter per second power 2, as we have here acceleration as we studied before, measuring unit is meter per second power 2. If the brakes are applied, find the time needed to stop, and we know here V2 equals 0 to stop the train. So how can we calculate the time needed here? By using the magic triangle. طبعا as we studied before, we use the triangle to know the relation between time, speed, to know the kind of acceleration. As we studied before, we know A equal delta V over delta T. صح؟ أقول له تمام. يبقى أنا عندي هوت as we know here A equal V2 minus V1 over delta T. So here we want to calculate, find time needed. أنا محتاج أعرف التايم هنا. So here we know يبقى T or time needed delta T equal V2 minus V1 over acceleration. We know V2 equal how many? From this problem we know V2 equal 0, and we know V1 equal 20 meter per second over a negative 2 meter per second as acceleration here. So we have what? V2 equal 0 minus what? 20 meters per second over negative 2. So we have here dear students what? أقول له عندي negative 20 over negative 2. Negative طبعا as we studied before in mathematics, negative with negative, and 20 over 2 equal how many? Equal 10 what? 10 seconds, because we know the measuring unit of acceleration of time here is what? Is seconds. So no, we know now the value of time in this problem. Okay. Okay dear students, now we can know the acceleration and kinds of acceleration, types of acceleration, and as we know today the new concept in our lesson, as we have to know physical quantities. يعني ايه physical quantities? As we will know here, physical quantities which means anything can be measured. أي حاجة أقدر أقيسها can be measured is called measuring is called physical quantities. Mass, length, distance, acceleration, time, force, weight, mass, all these quantities are called physical quantities. كلهم اسمهم physical quantities. But we have types of physical quantities. يعني physical quantities anything can be measured. أي حاجة أقدر أقيسها considered as physical quantities. But we have types of physical quantities. We should deal with this type of physical quantities, and we know how can we define each one of them. As we have here, Unit 1, Lesson 3, Physical Quantities, Scalar and Vector. So, from this title, we know we have two types of physical quantities, as scalar physical quantities and what? And vector physical quantities. How can we differentiate between each one of them? إزاي أقدر أميز كل واحد منهم عن التاني؟ Firstly, dear students, we have physical quantities, like as we have here, for example, length in meter, kilogram to calculate measuring unit of mass, as we studied before in primary stage and in first prep. تمام. So what is meant by physical quantity or physical quantities? So anything can be measured, like mass, length, time, speed, force, energy, temperature, and so on. Anything can be measured here, called what? Called physical quantities. يعني كمية فيزيائية زي ما بيسموها بالعربي. يعني anything can be measured. أقدر إن أنا أقيسه. Like force, like energy, like temperature, like time, like length, like speed, and like mass. So we have here, for example, meter for length or distance, and here we have kilogram for what? For mass. Type. We have how many types? We have first type, our first kind of physical quantities here, as called what? This physical quantity is called what? Is called the scalar physical quantity. So we should know what is meant by scalar physical quantity. يعني ايه scalar physical quantity? As we have here, if we talk about, for example, يعني مثلا هنا mass, length, speed, time, energy. Here we need what? To know each one of them. I need to know two things. For time, for example, يعني أنا أتكلم على time مثلا، هقول له 4 seconds، صح؟ أقول له تمام. As we talk about speed، هقول له for example 5 meters per second. So here we have what? We have number and we have measuring unit. We have what? We have number and we have measuring unit. Beside the number, we have a measuring unit and number. So just we need to know one thing to identify the scalar physical quantity. Physical quantities or quantity identify by magnitude only. By magnitude only. We need to identify إن أنا أتعرف عليها by using what? By using magnitude. Like magnitude يعني قيمة. For example, here we have 4 seconds. 4 seconds, we know here this magnitude of what? لما حد يسمع 4 seconds, we know we talk about time. If we talk about 4 meters or 5 meters per second, for example, we talk about speeds. For example, if we say, for example, يعني مثلا 10 kilograms, we talk about what? We talk about mass. يعني measuring unit, we studied before, measuring unit of mass is gram or kilogram. If we say 10 kilogram, so we know now magnitude here. 10 kilogram is considered as magnitude, as numerical with measuring unit. يعني number و measuring unit مع بعض. يبقى اسمهم ايه؟ magnitude. So we identify the scalar, the what? The scalar physical quantity. Again, we identify the scalar physical quantity by using magnitude only. By using what? Magnitude only. Again, we identify the scalar physical quantities by using magnitude A only. يعني لو قال لي هنا give reason for mass is considered as a scalar physical quantity. أقول له because what? أقول له because mass identified by magnitude only. صح؟ And we know measuring units, we should know measuring units of each one of them. As we have here 4 kilograms for مثلا mass. We have 6 meters length. We have 7 meters per second for speed. We have 4 hours time. We have 8 joules energy. We have مثلا هنا we talk about temperature. We have 10 Celsius as we talk about what? Temperature. So here we have 10 Celsius for temperature. We know we talk about temperature. So we know why, because we talk about a magnitude only. Okay? We identify by magnitude يعني بالقيمة بتاعتها بس. طيب. We have another type of physical quantities. As we see here, we have vector physical quantities. We have vector physical quantities. So we identify by what? We identify here by magnitude with other factor. We have 2 factors to identify the vector physical quantities. عندي حاجتين بعرفها بيهم. We have number 1 physical quantities identified by magnitude and direction. So we identify vector physical quantities by using what and what? By using magnitude and what? And direction. So here we can say we identify by magnitude and by direction. يعني لازم أعرف magnitude يعني القيمة، وأعرف direction يعني اتجاهها فين، رايحة فين وجاية منين. طيب. As we see here, dear students, we have examples about the scalar physical quantities. We have another examples of vector physical quantities. As we see here, for example, we have here examples about vector physical quantities as acceleration. Acceleration considered as vector physical quantity. As force للقوة, vector physical quantity. As here velocity اللي هي we know today a new concept, as we know before the speed as distance covered through time unit. Today we have a new concept as velocity, and we have a great difference. عندنا فرق كبير between velocity and speed. We have to talk about displacement, and we should know the great difference, الفرق الشاسع between displacement and distance. So each one of them considered as what? أقول له each one of them considered as vector physical quantity. كل دول what? Vector physical quantity, because we identify by magnitude and direction. How come? تيجي ازاي؟ أقول له 5 meters northwards. يعني 5 meter per second power 2. يعني as measuring unit here identify by magnitude القيمة بتاعتها and direction. قلت 5 meters per second power 2 northward يعني شمالا. تمام. As here we talk about force. okay. هقول له ايه في الفورس؟ اقول له 5 meters مثلا for example هنا left side. 5 meter left side. يبقى هنا we talk about what? We talk about displacement. As we have magnitude 5 meters and we have direction left side يعني ناحية الشمال. So now we know the concept of vector physical quantities as they identify by what? By magnitude and direction. Some students will ask me how can we differentiate between, خلي بالنا بقى, we differentiate now between velocity and speed, displacement and distance. So dear students, how can we differentiate between distance and displacement, speed and velocity? As we studied before in first prep, we can't differentiate, and we have no difference between speed, velocity, distance, time. As you like, you can say velocity or speed, distance or displacement. But today in this year we have a great to know the great difference between distance, displacement, between speed and velocity. How come? The first difference between speed, distance and velocity, displacement, speed and distance are scalar physical quantities because they identify by magnitude only, while velocity and displacement are vector physical quantities because they identified by only magnitude and direction. يبقى هنا عندنا أول difference between speed, distance and velocity with displacement. Okay, so now how can we I think we remember the definition of speed. Speed is distance covered through time units. صح؟ distance covered d over t. We call v equal d over t. We know this speed is distance covered through time unit. But how can we deal with, for example, يعني the scalar and vector as this video to identify the difference between vector and scalar physical quantity. As we see here, we talk about physical quantities which have magnitude only, as mass, as we see here, mass, as temperature, as time, as energy, as work, as speed, as distance. All these physical quantities, they identify by what? By magnitude only. But here we have vector physical quantities. They identify by what? As we see here on the monitor, please. They have identified by magnitude and direction. يعني بعرفهم بالقيمة والاتجاه. As displacement, acceleration, momentum, force, velocity. All these quantities identified by what? By magnitude and what? As we see here, and direction. يعني لازم أحدد اتجاهها. They come from which point and go to or for what or which point. Okay? So, dear students, now we have to, as we see here, to mention distance. يعني ايه distance بقى؟ واحد يقول لي يعني مسافة. صح. طيب, how can we define in English? Distance is the actual length between 2 points. هي المسافة الواقعية between the 2 points. Actual length between the 2 points. كل اللي أنا مشيته. ده فرق كبير جدا. واحد يقول لي طب ما displacement كده برضه. أقول له لا. Displacement is what? Displacement here is what? Is the shortest straight line between 2 points. أقصر خط مستقيم ما بين نقطتين. As we see here in this point, how can we differentiate between here and here? مثلا the primary point and a final point. Here we have, as we see, we have point A and point B. This body go from point A to point B. As distance هو واقعيا مشي ازاي؟ مشي كده اهو، وبعدين يعني اللي هو اللاين ده كده اللي انا همشي عليه مثلا بلون تاني عشان يبقى بالنسبه لكم اوضح شويه. red line اهو. Go in this direction, then مثلا maybe meet a square, قابل ميدان, platform مثلا رصيف محطة أو حاجة, then return back again and go to point what? To point B. So here we talk about what? We talk about distance. We talk about what? Distance. Distance is the what? Is the actual length between the 2 points. يبقى هنا ده بتكلم على distance. Distance is what? Is the actual point, actual length, sorry, between the 2 points. But if we want to talk about displacement, we have just shortest straight line between 2 points. يعني أقصر حاجة أنا مشيتها بقوم ساحب خط كده ما بينهم الاثنين. Okay, dear students, let's go to take a little break, then we will return back again. Hello dear students again. Have we know now? We have to know the difference between distance, displacement, speed and velocity. We know distance is the actual length between 2 points. يعني المسافة الواقعية ما بين حاجتين أو نقطتين. If I want to go from this point now or my chair toward this camera, لو أنا عايز أتحرك من الكرسي ده الكاميرا دي, I will go in this direction, then I will return back and go in this direction. But if I want to calculate the displacement, الفرق بقى, displacement between me and this camera, I will take a short straight line. يعني محدش يقول لي طب ما في هنا table مثلا between you and this camera. In this case, I have to calculate the short straight line. أقصر خط مستقيم ما بين نقطتين. يبقى if we want to know about distance, الفرق ما بين distance و displacement إن distance is the actual length between 2 points. يعني إنما displacement is the short straight line. لازم يبقى shortest straight line في 2 conditions, في شرطين. shortest straight line يعني أقصر خط مستقيم ما بين ال 2 points اللي أنا اتكلمت عليهم دلوقتي. طبعا we have a great difference. If I want to calculate the distance between me and this camera, ما بيني وما بين الكاميرا, I will calculate this distance or this length in this direction, then I will go around the table toward the camera. But if I want to calculate the displacement, in this case, I will calculate the shortest straight line between me or this point and this point. According to these definitions, we have another definitions. One of them we studied before in lesson 1, and then we have another one we will study today. So here on this monitor we have, as you see here, we know distance and displacement. طبعا we know displacement is a short straight line between 2 points. هو أقصر خط مستقيم بين primary point and final point, or starting point and the ending point. As we have here, point A toward point B. Okay, من point A هنا toward point B we have the shortest straight line. خدنا short straight line. This called what? This short straight line is called displacement. But if we want to talk about distance, we take what here? The actual length. خدنا المسافة اللي احنا مشيناها حقيقي لنا حصل في الواقع. According to this definition, we have to know a new concept here, as we have to know what is meant by speed. Speed V. Okay, what is meant by speed? As we will remember here, distance covered. Distance covered through time unit, or in 1 second, or as time passes. So we have a triangle, and we studied before in lesson 1. خدناه قبل كده اللي هو كده، وكنا we have speed equal what over what? Yes, equal distance over time. Equal what? V equal D over T, as distance covered through time units. But if we talk about velocity, here we should know velocity has another symbol, as we have V arrow. Why? عشان نفرق ما بين speed V only. But velocity is what? Is V with arrow. Why? Because velocity is a vector physical quantity, which means identify by magnitude and direction. So we have displacement covered through time unit. So we have here what we have. The first difference, as we talk about displacement covered, okay, and here we have distance covered, but we have common factor between them, as here through time units, and here through time units. So the symbol of displacement is what? Displacement, its symbol is D with arrow, زي ما احنا شايفين كده. Okay, so velocity V with arrow, velocity equal displacement D with arrow over time. So now we know the difference between distance and displacement, speed and velocity. Distance is what? Is the actual length between 2 points. المسافة اللي مشيتها بالفعل. نزلت من بيتي مثلا، نزلت على السلم، بعدين مشيت يمين، مشيت شمال، whatever. انت you go in which place or which direction, we have to calculate all length between 2 points. But displacement here, we talk about the shortest straight line between the primary or starting point and the ending point. Okay, and according to distance, displacement, we know now what is meant by speed and what is meant by velocity according to the definition. We know now speed is what? Speed is distance covered through time units. Okay, but velocity is what? Is displacement covered through time units. You have a common factor here between them, as here we talk about time and time. And we have, dear students, little experiment. We can do it in lab or at your home by yourself. This experiment to know how can we differentiate between vector and scalar physical quantity according to the direction of these things. We have firstly vector physical quantity identified by magnitude and direction, but we have only scalar physical quantity has one factor to define them, as we define them by magnitude only. Let's go to start, and watch this little experiment, then we will return back again. Hello dear students, we have to know today the new point in Unit 1 as we talk about the vector and the scalar physical quantities. We know any physical quantities in your life as mass, as distance, displacement, speed, velocity, and we know before that speed as velocity, and we know today we have a great difference between speed, velocity, mass, weight, distance and displacement. So here we should know, as we calculate, for example, distance covered by this car from this place or this point to this point. If we calculate this distance only, we talk about distance as scalar physical quantity. As scalar physical quantity. This car moves in this direction. But if we talk or say that this car moves with our covered 4 meters northward or southward, يعني شمالا أو جنوبا, يبقى we talk about measuring unit and we talk about direction. So here we have to differentiate, dear students, about scalar physical quantities and vector physical quantities. Vector physical quantities, as we can imagine or we can recognize these quantities by knowing only the value. But here we have another physical quantities, we can mention them by knowing the value and direction, or measuring unit and direction. For example, here on the board we can say speed equal 5 meters or 5 meters only. But if we talk about velocity, we say what? We say 5 meters per second northward. Yani we say about measuring units and we talk about at the same time direction, so we can differentiate between speed and velocity as vector, as velocity, as acceleration, as weight, and at the same time we can differentiate as scalar physical quantities as speed, as mass, as time and distance. Welcome back, dear students. How can we now to differentiate between the speed, velocity, distance, displacement according to the main difference between them according to scalar and physical vector physical quantities? But how can we deal with this يعني quantities according to problems? ازاي اتعامل معاه in problems مسائل يعني. So we should differentiate between distance, displacement. If we can differentiate between them, we can also find the difference between speed and velocity, so we can calculate both of them. So let's go to start to answer this problem. As we see here, a body moves from point A northward to B, covers 40 meters in 5 seconds. We should focus, we can answer these problems by drawing as draft in your answer paper. يعني واحد يقول لي لازم ارسمها as draft، يعني مش لازم with ruler حتى يعني. فبقول له move from point A to point B. northward. عرفت منين انه كده in this direction؟ انه قال لي northward، قال لي شمالا اهو، هو اللي قال لي. and we mature enough، احنا كبار كفايه to differentiate between the four main directions north south east and west. عارفين طبعا الفروق ما بينهم كويس قوي. so here then this body moves eastward covering 60 meters in 3 seconds. يبقى هو اتحرك شرقا eastward like that. how many 60 meters in 3 seconds. يبقى we write number 1. كتبنا أول حاجة أهو 40 meters 5 seconds, then 60 meters in how many? In 3 seconds. then زي ما احنا شايفين قدامنا moves from C to D southward، يعني نزل لتحت اهو. cover how many southward. okay 40 meters in 2 seconds. okay 40 meters in 2 seconds. we have no problem here. 40 meters in 2 seconds. okay يبقى هو move this body moves from point A to B to C to D. then we want to calculate distance. number 1, distance, and we know distance is what? Is the actual length between the 2 points, starting and ending point. يبقى we should calculate distance here. distance equal what? equal 40 أيوة 40 plus 60 plus 40. so how many? so distance equal 140 meters. then he wants or asked me about the how can we calculate here the displacement. okay يبقى displacement D with arrow equal how many? displacement is the shortest straight line between the starting point and the ending point. يعني أقصر مسافة ما بين نقطة البداية ونقطة النهاية. shortest straight line between the starting point and the ending point. starting point is A and the ending point is D. so here we have this displacement, this red line. so how come يعني how come we can calculate? we have here 40 here and here we have 40. they are equal and parallel. so here we have 60. so here we have how many? we have 60 meters. so now we know that displacement equal how many? equal 60 meters. so we have a great difference between distance and displacement. okay we need to calculate speed and we need to calculate the velocity. so speed equal V equal D over T, total distance over total time. total distance equal how many? 140, and we know this from this first point, over total time. time equal how many? 5 plus 3 plus 2 equal how many? equal 10. 10 seconds equal how many? equal 14 meter per second. okay then we need to calculate what? we need to calculate the velocity with green light here. يبقى velocity equal how many? velocity equal displacement over time. displacement over what? over time. يعني equal displacement equal how many? we know displacement equal 60 meters. يبقى 60 meters over time. time equal how many? time doesn't change. time هو how many? 10 seconds. يبقى over كام? over 10 equal 6 meter per second. so now we know velocity speed اهي equal 14 meters per second and velocity equal 6 meters per second. we have a great difference between speed velocity, and also we have a great difference between distance and displacement. distance equal 140 meters and displacement equal 60 meters. We have another example here. As we see, a body moves from point A northward to B, covers 40 meters in 5 seconds. يبقى لازم to start with my pencil as to draw a draft to mention or to recognize the direction. So here we have from A to B. Northward 40 meters in 5 seconds. Then from C covering how many? 60 meters in 3 seconds. يبقى we should write these numbers. لازم نكتبهم مع بعض. Okay? يبقى number 1 40 meters 5 seconds. Okay? Then here how many? 60 meters how many? 3 seconds. Okay? Then go in this direction. يعني عرفت منين برضو؟ قال لي covering 3 seconds in 3 seconds, then moving southward جنوبا. اقول له يبقى نزل لتحت كده. Okay? Covering how many? 40 meters in how many? As you see in 2 seconds. يبقى 40 meters in 2 seconds. تمام؟ Then return back to its origin point. ورجع تاني لنقطة الأصل، للأوريجين بوينت اللي هي اللي كان واقف فيها. Then return back to its origin point. How can طبعا then return back to its origin point in 2 seconds. 2 seconds. طيب. Before I will calculate or answer this problem, I should here write this value of this length. طبعا بكام؟ طبعا 60 meters. We know from they are equal and parallel, so they are equal and parallel. تمام. Okay. Then I need to calculate distance. We know distance equal the actual length between 2 points. Distance يبقى كام؟ 40 plus 60 plus 40 plus 60. يبقى how many? 200. يبقى 200 meters. 40 60 100, 40 and 60 equal 100. يبقى total 200 meters. Then we need to calculate displacement. Displacement equal كام بقى هنا؟ We know displacement is the shortest straight line between a starting point and the ending point. طب starting point فين؟ Here. And the ending point is also here. يعني رجع تاني to the starting point. If the body return back to its starting point, its displacement equal how many? Equal 0. 0 meters. So شفنا الفرق, great difference between distance and displacement. Then we need to calculate speed. Speed equal how many? Total distance over total time. Distance over time equal how many? Equal 200. التايم equal how many؟ هيقول لي التايم هنا equal 5 3 2 and then 2. 3 and 5 equal how many؟ 8 2 10 and then 2 يبقى 12. By using calculator, 200 divide or over 12 equal how many? 16.6. 16.6 meters per second. But if I want to calculate velocity v arrow or equal displacement over time, طبعا هنا velocity equal how many? طبعا هيقول لي 0. Why? Because displacement equal 0 and 0 over any thing equal 0. طبعا we know this information from primary stage, dear students. So now, dear students, we know the difference between distance, displacement, speed and time. But we have only one case. عندنا only one case. Distance equal displacement. We have give reason here in this point. يقول لي مثلا sometimes or distance equal displacement. امتى distance equal displacement? In one case, if the body moves in a straight line in one direction. الحالة الوحيدة distance equal displacement. If I move from point A to point B in a straight line in one direction. If I want to calculate distance, in this case distance equal displacement. So speed equal velocity. In only one case, and we have give reason about this. And we have give reason about this point, okay? As we have here, for example, لو بصينا هنا مثلا pilots take in consideration the velocity and the direction of winds. يعني البايلوتس بياخدوا في اعتبارهم سرعة واتجاه الرياح. طبعا direction and velocity of winds. اقول له why؟ اقول له because the okay we have phone caller here, عبد الرحمن from Alexandria.
Hello.
Hello عبد الرحمن, how are you؟
I'm fine. Mr.
اتفضل your question. اسمعني من التليفون يا عبد الرحمن.
Hello.
اتفضل.
I want to ask.
Okay, to be asked.
Yes.
Okay, how can you answer this question on this monitor? Pilots take in consideration the velocity and direction of winds. عبد الرحمن.
أنا مش شايفه.
طب ممكن يجيبوا له بس الكويستشن على المونيتور هنا؟ يلا يا عبد الرحمن.
لسه ما جاي. بيقول ايه؟
Pilots take in consideration the velocity and direction of winds.
To calculate amount fuel necessary to complete the trip.
Excellent عبد الرحمن. Excellent. فعلا يبقى to know the consumption of fuel or fuel necessary for this trip. Thank you عبد الرحمن. You have any question عبد الرحمن?
No.
Thank you عبد الرحمن for your calling. Bye. So here as عبد الرحمن said, لما عبد الرحمن قال لنا الانسر مظبوطه طبعا. قال فيها to know the amount of fuel that will use or necessary for the trip عشان يستخدمها في الرحلة. أكيد if we fly with wind direction, لو أنا طاير في نفس اتجاه الرياح, not like if I will fly against wind direction. If I will drive on the roads, asphalt roads, طريق أسفلت, not like if you drive on sandy road, لو أنا ماشي في طريق مليان رمل. Here we talk about what? We talk about the amount of fuel. بنتكلم على نسبة أو كمية الوقود that we'll use during or in this trip. As you see here, we have just scientific term. Physical quantities has magnitude only, as we studied before. We know what scalar physical quantity. And here we have the rate of change in displacement. خلي بالنا بص ما يضحكش عليا. بيقول لي change in displacement. يعني displacement بتتغير. يبقى بيتكلم على ايه؟ ايوه velocity. Rate of change of displacement. Rate هنا اكني بقول time. خلي بالنا. Number 3. Short straight line between starting and ending point. As we have here, we talk about displacement. خلي بالنا من question 2 انا بعيد عليه تاني. And اخر question, last question here, we have vector quantity that measured by meter per second. We have only one scalar quantity identified by meter per second as speed, and here we talk about vector physical quantity identified by meter per second. Here we talk about velocity. Just we should know that number 2 and number 4 the same answer, but here we talk about change in displacement, we talk about velocity, but we talk about vector quantity measured by meter per second, so we talk about velocity. Okay, dear students, in this episode we have to know the difference between physical quantities, as we studied before, the vector and scalar physical quantities, and how can we differentiate between them. We know speed, velocity, distance, displacement, and how can we deal with any problem. At the end of this episode, I hope you get more benefits and completely understand from this lesson. Until we meet again, thank you, see you soon, and goodbye.